So if my face does not look familiar to you, I hope we become fast friends. But my name is Bailey Ritter, and I'm originally from Pontiac, Illinois. And when I grew up, I told people I either wanted to be a vet, and that was like my long-term dream, or I wanted to be Bindi Irwin. And I still think I can be her. I unfortunately couldn't find a college major that was about, oh, my lights are going out. That was about Bindi Irwin and being her. But it's a lifelong goal still of mine. But I'm the youth advisor for the Ocean Project. And at the very end, I will share how to get involved with the Rising Blue Network and show you where you can sign up for the brand new newsletter for even more ways to get involved with cool organizations such as Ben's, and overall get involved with the global youth movement. But I'm absolutely thrilled and excited to be joined by Ben May. Ben, you're from New York, right?
I'm kind of like bouncing between a few different places.
I put New York.
I was born in PA.
Wait, what did you say?
I was born in PA, but I grew up a bit in New York, and I'm like living in Boston right now just because quarantine being like relocating us to random places. But I would say like PA is my home.
Okay, I put New York, and then I started the webinar and was like, I never asked where Ben wanted to say he was from. So hope New York is fine, but you just got where Ben is from live. And Ben wanted to be a vet or a chemist. And he is all of that and more. But I'm absolutely thrilled to introduce him, and I'm just so honored that he could make it this month. I met Ben when, Ben May, obviously. I met Ben when we were part of the first Seas Rise Up delegation in 2016, when we were wee babies in the ocean advocacy movement. And when I say Ben was the most energetic and passionate ocean advocate I had ever met, like, I would not be exaggerating, and you guys will get to see what I mean by that. And that sentiment honestly has not changed. I'm super fortunate to have been able to work alongside of him and call him a friend. And so it's really great that now I have an excuse to talk with him with all of you live. Like, I could not literally be doing anything better on a Wednesday night. But let me tell you a little bit more about Ben, and then we will get into it with some great questions. As always, if you have any questions for Ben, please put them in the chat. Or Ben's dog, if you have a question for Ben's dog, who now knows how to open doors, that's great too. But please put them in the chat or the Q&A box, and then we'll have time at the very end to talk through them. But Ben is the president and the founder of ThinkOcean Society, which you will be learning a little bit more about during this conversation. But it's a chapter-based network of high school and college students around the globe. He is the ocean policy advisor for the Youth Ocean Conservation Summit and a former coordinator of Seas Rise Up himself. In 2018, he was recognized as a Global 30 Under 30 for environmental education by the North American Association of Environmental Education, or NAAE. Ben was also named a 2019 NOAA Ernst F. Holling Scholar, and is a current junior at the University of Pennsylvania, majoring in international relations with a concentration on the climate crisis. He is, amongst other things, an expert at organizing, environmental education, and climate policy, but he's a wealth of knowledge in all other areas. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so you can see our lovely faces full screen. But let's get it going. Ben, I first met you in Seas Rise Up, like I mentioned, but let's talk about how you got started in this line of work, how and what made you inspired to be an ocean advocate and, an environmental educator.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for the introduction. I'm sorry, my dog kind of jumped on my lap midway through that. He's now just asleep on my lap. Got me through the pandemic. Love this dog, incredible. But that is not answering your question. So I feel like I got into the climate crisis and into activism, like education, advocacy, um, largely because my family are a lot of scientists. I'm the only one in my family that's not studying science right now. And so I was raised with that scientific perspective of just like looking at things critically and like caring about science and caring about facts, and seeing how like important and influential the climate crisis was, being the most like impactful issue that we've ever faced as a species. I saw it as something that personally, where I went to school, not many people really cared about or even knew about. And so coming from, again, like living in New York and PA and a bunch of different places, I saw this as a great opportunity to not just spur and like, bring about action through local organizing and local community organizing, but likewise saw that as to be like one of the biggest building blocks towards creating solutions to climate change. So I think that like the first time I got ever involved with climate change activism or environmental work or education was in high school. I mean, before that was going to like marches and doing like quick educational stuff and like picking up plastic on my way home. But started up a environmental club at my school, which if you talk to a lot of environmental activists, I feel like that's something that a lot of them would cite as their first action, and is like either getting a part of an organization or starting like a small one in their local community. And I remember I went to like a pretty small high school. It was only about like 100 people, 180 people per class. And before this club was founded, like we didn't have a recycling program. No one really cared about climate change. A lot of people didn't know much about it at all. And once it was founded, like we had a membership of like 70 people, and ended up being like a huge push in the school and local community to do beach cleanups and educational efforts and organizing around issues and getting like what both like local legislation across, as well as like getting the local community more engaged around climate related issues. And so I know that this is a long anecdote to preface a lot of the other work, but I do see that as both something that I've seen a lot of people during their first steps in getting involved doing, like both starting a club at their school or getting involved with like a local group. But since then, I've found that like working internationally and working with other people has been really instrumental. Again, I did not come from a really wealthy family, nor a really well-connected family. And so I never, especially when I was younger, never even dreamed to be working with such an incredible team with ThinkOcean. And having worked with you, Bailey, since 2016 is when we met, which is just mind-boggling. And so one of the things kind of going into, ThinkOcean and also like to later work, one of the reasons why that was founded and one of the reasons why I got into a lot more like international organizing was recognizing that myself growing up, I cared about climate change, but I didn't have access to opportunities. I didn't know where to start. I didn't know who to reach out to. I didn't know how to get funding or advisorship or anything. And so ThinkOcean at its inception was to connect people that were otherwise not connected to opportunities, resources, advisorship, you name it, to expand their impact from what might just be on their local high school or college campus to being something that can be regional or national or global in nature. And so long-winded answer to say that started out local. I think that everything ties back to being local, but have been really fortunate to get to expand a lot of the work I've done to like a global stage.
No, it was not long-winded at all because you answered my second question, but let's tease out ThinkOcean a little bit more. I say this time and time again, it's one of the most organized, thought through, youth-led organizations that I've ever come across. And I've constantly been inspired by both your work, but also your chapter president's work, 15 chapters, or 15 countries with chapters, like that's insane. Can you talk a little bit more about ThinkOcean, what y'all are working on right now? You kind of talked about why it was started, but where is it at now? What's the mission? What's the vision? What do you guys got going on?
Yeah. So, I mean, again, I would say ThinkOcean focuses on a lot of different sectors. Climate change inherently is the most multifaceted, intersectional topic of our generation, arguably any generation. Um, and so a lot of our work hits very different parts of daily life, ranging from community organizing, where for example, a few of our chapters in California this past year held huge, large scale beach cleanups. And it was really exciting to see, just looking at this one example, like exciting to see those grow over time, where I think the first time they held it, it was like 3 or so chapters coming together to have like a 30 to 40 person thing, but it ended up growing to being like 200 people coming out and cleaning up a huge like stream within California. And so anything from like local organizing and grassroots like conservation efforts like that, to focusing on legislative efforts. Previously, we've done grassroots coalitional beating, and I know we're going to talk about coalitions a little bit later, but in 2019, for example, our Mid-Atlantic region within the United States got a plastic bag ban bill passed statewide in Delaware, working with a coalition of different advocacy groups and stakeholders, which was a great both inlet to activism and legislation, and getting young people's voice at the decision-making table quite literally. And then, abroad as well, both looking at legislative or otherwise, we've done documentaries. For example, in ThinkOcean, Italy, they recently filmed and released a documentary on the impact of climate change in northern Italy, highlighting the recession of the glaciers there and the impact it's having both on the tourism sector as well as like the local villages in that area. Likewise, ranging from like, and I would say that going into what we're focusing on right now, we have almost entirely pivoted to being very focused on educational efforts. COVID is terrible. There's really not that many things that we can point to and say like, this is a positive thing for COVID. But I think that one of the few saving graces of 2020 is recognizing how interconnected our global like virtual world is, and how it poses an opportunity to bring people together through virtual medium, and awesome webinars like this, getting to bring people together that might not be able to meet in person, but instead are able to meet virtually. And so our big project for 2021, and something that we started a bit last fall, is our One World United by Crisis webinar series. So this is going to be run by our various different national networks around the world, highlighting the differing impacts of climate change from a local perspective, as well as highlighting just like differing topics as it relates to climate change. So for example, in 2020, we held webinars ranging from an environmental racism webinar highlighting a case study in Maryland, to a few in Hong Kong, highlighting anything from sustainable fashion to sustainable produce. That was both local and global. And then also a local webinar workshop series in Cameroon, discussing like the issues related to plastic pollution there, and especially like plastic pollution ending up in local waterways. And so a lot of our work previously has been, when you boil it down, bringing people together and like organizing to make for shared purpose and to make larger projects. And going into 2021, I would say the biggest thing we're focusing on is that webinar series, is grassroots movements, and making the best of our virtual world as it stands right now. But just a quick shout out, I saw that Lami just hopped on as well. Lami is our new deputy director for the global webinar series. So good to see you, Lami.
That's amazing. Yeah, no, I think all of us, right, are equally trying to tread this new and exciting world of, I mean, virtual gathering has never, I mean, it's been around, but to the extent of which, we're using and gathering in 2020 and now 2021, I mean, we're all trying to figure it out. Like, how do we best navigate this landscape and provide as many opportunities for education and learning as possible for free, such as this webinar, but also ThinkOcean's webinar as well. So let's talk a little bit about, so you kind of talked about ThinkOcean, the idea, I can only imagine, in my brain, I'm thinking of Ben sitting in his college dorm room, just like, I have an idea, creating on his laptop, creating ThinkOcean. How does that, and maybe that's not how it went, but that's the mental picture I'm at least going to continue to have. But how does that go from an idea that theoretically thought of in your bedroom one day to now a organization that spans 15 countries with chapters of different high school and college students around the globe? How does that idea go from this organization you want to start to now a global movement? For anyone watching going, wait a second, I have an idea. How do I grow that if I'm not well connected, or I'm not, don't have as many connections around the world?
So I would, to first answer the initial part of the question, I would say that ThinkOcean in no way, shape, or form is something I should take credit for. Like, I think I'm incredibly fortunate to have founded it and worked with it and been able to be instrumental in a lot of both its administrative, financial, project related work. But I think that the thing that's made ThinkOcean successful over the years, I think now it's been around for 3.5 years or so, which is just insane to me, is the coalition / network aspects to it. And again, I know we're going to talk about this later, so I'm not going to jump too much into it. But what I've found is that some of the best organizations, best initiatives, best efforts are never the product of any individual people or even small groups, but rather, bring together differing worldviews, differing, and bring together a multifaceted approach to tackling, whether it be education, conservation, or activism, that really comes from differing perspectives on the team. So, for example, over the years, I know that our board of directors currently has people from all over the North America, as well as other countries as well. Previously, I think we had 3 different countries represented on the board of directors, representing our various different national networks, and representing a lot of the projects going on in those different national networks. And so what we found is that as we expanded abroad, making sure that we are bringing in as many voices as possible to the decision-making table, both internally and externally with our projects. And so that doesn't necessarily answer to and so going to a little bit to the latter point of the question of hey, let's say you have an idea, you want to get something done, you want to get a project created or realized. I would say my biggest recommendation is, one, do it. I think that it's really common for people to just talk and be oh, I want to write a book. That's actually, I'm for myself, I've been telling myself I want to write something for years, and it's never, that's one thing that that's my goal is this summer sitting down, just doing it over a couple months. But something I've found is it's very easy to get yourself into a rabbit hole of saying, oh, I'm going to do something in the future. I'm not going to act on this. I'm not going to do it now, maybe later. And so if you have an idea and you want to do it, just start. I think that starting is one of the hardest things with any new project, not to discount the hours of work that goes into it. And then likewise, one of the biggest areas of success and also shortfalls for smaller organizations is making sure that you're bringing in others onto your both founding team, onto your leadership team, and distributing different roles. I know for me, I'm colorblind. So fun fact, whenever I was growing up, I would always ask my brother and my sister, hey, does this match? Because I couldn't tell. And so if I had an argument with them the day before, they might tell me that something matched that didn't actually. So I'd go to school with completely clashing clothing, and I wouldn't be any of the wiser. But with that said, for example, a lot of the creative work with ThinkOcean, albeit work a lot with that team, and I would say almost every whether it be a social media post or creative post, I guess oversee and be a part of the review process. But making sure that those projects and those and the creation of them don't go to people that are colorblind, or at least people that are are able to specialize in those different areas of the team. And so, for example, our finance team has people that are focusing on finances, and likewise for conservation and project led stuff. people that have a background in whether it be organizing or et cetera. And so basically making sure that you're playing to people's strengths. I know for myself, at least like painting is not my strength, and like creative stuff is not my strength. And so that's just like one example of like the making sure like delegating specific tasks and working within your team like that. I'm sorry, give me 1 second. My dog has been like staring at me this entire call, trying to be let out. Give me like
No,
2.
you're totally fine. I'll kind of talk to your point a little bit, that I completely agree. I think one of the hardest parts is going from an idea to, okay, I'm going to do it. Like, not even like the first step, it's the actualization that I want to move forward with it. Like, that can almost be the biggest hurdle. So I want to echo Ben, that if you are watching this either here live or in the future on YouTube, please just do it. do it. If you see something happening, if you want to get involved with something, if you notice something that somebody else doesn't, and you have an idea of how to either help fix it or how to take action or how to address it, do it. Like, please, we need you. Like, don't leave us hanging. Just like join. We will welcome you with open arms. We're looking for you to join the movement. So yeah, I know that's easier said than done, but definitely want to echo Ben on that sentiment. So let's talk about what the theme of this webinar is, and that's coalition building. I don't know if any of you watching read the title and were like, coalition building, what is that? Like, what does that phrase mean? And what does that look like? So Ben, if you could just set the stage for us, and for this conversation, can you talk about what coalition building means and what that can look like? It can take different forms, but what is the version that you are most familiar with?
Yeah. So I think that to start, differentiating between networks and coalitions is a good idea. So I know that, for example, like ThinkOcean is a network of chapters, like high schools and colleges. And likewise, it's a great conducive environment for networking. Like, a lot of like incredible friendships have come out of the organization, and whether even people working on like different national teams, that might collaborate on a specific project, or et cetera, getting to know each other over the years of working together. And so with that said, that's how I would like define like a network of like people being connected on like shared purpose, and et cetera. But I would say like a coalition, as opposed, would be like people, whether within the same organization or more likely from partner organizations and stakeholder groups and et cetera, coming together for a shared project or initiative or purpose. And so I know that I was using the example of like the plastic bag ban bill passed in Delaware, June of 2019. And that was done through partnership of a coalition of local partners, as well as elected officials and stakeholders, to make that happen and get that passed. And especially when you're delving into like legislative work, which can be in the nitty gritty of stuff and can like drag on for years at times, coalitions both make sure that you're held together, that you are like held accountable, more importantly, and you also have like ample resources and expertise to make projects successful. But especially like going even more than that, for example, plastic pollution is like a big issue globally, and I think it's also like a pretty big issue for water and ocean related advocacy. And so, for example, straws. Straws are terrible. Plastic straws. They don't break down. They like can't be recycled. I think almost everyone's seen like the iconic video of straw being stuck in like a turtle's nose and that having to be removed, and it's just heart-wrenching, the issues that come from plastic pollution. So there was a huge drive to get plastic straws banned in different states. Now, on paper, that sounds awesome. Like, who would be against that, right? Like, I mean, I understand some people are like, I just like my plastic straw, but like, most people, if you're educated on like that, on the specific issue of plastic pollution, realize the toll it has on the environment, the alternatives that can be placed instead. it can be seen as like almost common sense legislation over time. But that discounts a lot of the experiences of people that really rely on plastic straws. A lot of people with pre-existing conditions, for example, like need to eat out of a straw, and paper straws don't really cut it, especially if it's like left in water for a long amount of time. And so if you were to go into, for example, a legislative initiative and you're like, hey, I want to get plastic straws banned, and you don't advise with marginalized groups, frontline communities, communities that are going to be directly affected by this legislation, are already being affected or rely on the things at hand, then you do almost a disjustice to the climate justice side of things, and whether it be advocacy, education, or whatever. And so I think coalitions as a whole, both to bring in those affected communities or those frontline communities into the conversation, giving them ownership and power within those deliberations and that negotiation. And it makes the ultimate output or legislation, if it's legislative or educational material, whatever, a lot more both effective, but likewise, I think like forward looking and like working towards not just a more sustainable community, but more equitable community, and a more just community, and so on and so forth. And so coalitions, I would say, are not just important about getting things to be done successfully, but like be done in the best way possible.
Yeah, and it just echoes your point of knowing that you don't know everything, knowing that you haven't experienced everything, and that there are very valuable people who have, that their input is not only necessary, but I mean, it's important, it's valid, it makes whatever you're working on so much more inclusive and right. You know, like I just think I see kind of the intersectional movement and coalition building of different environmental organizers across climate change, ocean advocacy, biodiversity loss, plastic pollution, and it's really exciting because all of these issues do go hand in hand. So why not build together, you know, the future that we all want and deserve, that's healthy and abundant and just flourishing. So how do coalitions kind of help the larger movement, if you will? You know, if you are working, obviously it would be like the most ideal would be to have a coalition of all environmental organizations on this planet all working towards one major thing. I mean, that's, talk about a movement, that's the movement. But how do coalitions, say like in the state of Pennsylvania, you know, all working towards this one either plastic bag ban or whatever it is, how does that help the larger movement if you have you know, not necessarily individual actions, but more individual coalitions?
So very, very good question. I would say like, I think this is actually, and this is a little bit outside the realm of youth activism, so to say, but bear with me, it is relevant for city networks. Cities, for example, are some of the most overlooked global actors, both modernly, but previously. Like, for example, previous climate agreements are always coming from, like, international agreements are coming from like national actors, like national governments. But what we're finding is that cities are taking on a increasingly localized role, where they're both local actors. You know, they're important about about things going on within a city, within a municipality, but they're also taking on an increasingly prevalent role in getting international legislation, or at least international action, done on climate change and other issues. And, you know, coming through networks like C40 or Climate Mayors, or other networks as well. And so what we found is that, like, looking at that case example, for example, coalitions help to bring together what would all otherwise be, you know, disparate efforts, decentralized efforts a lot of the time, that may not, for the city example, don't have access a lot of the time to the financial means to get stuff done, or the advisorship and expertise to get stuff done. But having this coalition bringing together not just expertise, but advisorship and funding capabilities and others that make not only progress possible, but a reality as well. And so to, like, to quote the great peacemaker Hiawatha in the Iroquois, you know, uh, uh, history of like the creation of that federation was that like one arrow is frail, but like a bundle of arrows together is unbreakable. And so when youth are working together, whether it be on the local level in a high school or college, or if youth are just working together in the local community, they can do really good work in that local area, in that microcosm. But when they come together for a shared purpose, whether that be Greta Thunberg and bringing millions of people to the streets to march on for climate justice and climate action, whether it be the coalition to get a plastic bag bill passed. This brings together those otherwise decentralized disparate efforts to create one unified formidable force to get large scale action done. And so again, I would say coalitions and one of the best, most important parts for them, whether it be with youth or in another sector like cities, I'd say that they're our best means of getting progress made and of challenging institutions that have been around for hundreds of years that are not looking for progress to be made.
No, I don't know why you said follow me. Like that was the most well put coalition example I've ever heard. So we all definitely followed that. So how do coalitions happen? Like what does the actual building look like? Is it as simple as an email saying, "Hey, I like what you do. Let's join together," or is it more complicated than that? I might be oversimplifying it, but what does that actually building look like?
Yeah, so I mean, like, again, for the sake of time, not going to go like into all of the nitty gritty for that question. But to give kind of a succinct answer, which I'm terrible at, is is that like when a coalition gets founded, it's never founded in its ultimate form, right? It's never like, it gets founded. All right, awesome. We have 100 members. We're immediately getting projects done. It's immediately action. Like coalitions grow over time. They grow from shared purpose. They grow from new members recognizing the benefits that come from being a part of this network, of being a part of a coalition. And so, for example, if we're talking about there's a new coalition just got founded recently called the Build Back Fossil Free. It's a coalition of dozens of different climate-related activist groups within the United States. I believe they're all domestic, that are focused on encouraging the new Biden administration to implement more fossil-free legislation and be more environmentally conscious in their actions. And so that coalition, for example, has a lot of people that have already worked together on other coalitions. And so you might find for these big coalitions of groups is that much of the time the initial coalition might be founded from just pre-existing relationships. If groups work together already on a few projects, they're more likely than not going to reach out to each other to work together on a future project. And so, but when you're talking about, for example, and so that answers that. So I don't think this like really goes into like for a specific organization, but rather for movements. And so what I would say is that like when a coalition initially gets started, if it's a single group or a collection of groups, much of the time they'll reach out to groups that they already have relations with, that they've already worked with. And then ultimately it goes on and snowballs from there. And if those groups that come in have groups that they can vouch for and they can say like this group is, great for such and such, would be great for this shared purpose, for this initiative, inviting them and bringing them into the circle. A lot of coalitions also commonly have on their website saying like, hey, if you're interested in joining this coalition of organizations, like reach out to us at this email and apply, for example. And so like as it grows and larger and building that garnered interest from the public and just other organizations that no one in that coalition might have known about previously, that would apply and get involved after that. But I think that this plays a little bit into the concept of making sure that you are building consistency within your relationships with organizations or individuals. And so making sure that you are like answering emails on time. If they set a deadline for a deliverable, get it in on that deliverable, and building that trust over time that allows you to, get involved with future efforts.
I love that. I think that's always been the case for me. It's someone being like, hey, do you want to get involved with X? And it's like, yes, of course. So don't be afraid also, people, if you see efforts that you are really inspired by, or that really speaks to the things you care about, reach out, see if you can help. Even if you don't have an organization, see how you can join a coalition, either by joining one of those organizations in a coalition or just helping out at the kind of organizing level of the coalition. I can speak for myself. We're always looking for people to get involved in every way, shape, and form. So just reach out to people that you think are cool and see how you can help out. I want to be cognizant of time, so please, if you do have a question for Ben, as you can see, wealth of knowledge here, so definitely take this opportunity to ask. But one thing I want to kind of end on from myself in terms of questions, and then I'll share some ways for you all to get involved with Ben's work, and kind of the work around World Ocean Day coming up very, very soon, which is very exciting. But my last question for you, Ben, is to me, if I'm an audience member or viewer watching this, I'm like, amazing, coalitions, that's the thing to do. Like they sound perfect. What would you say is either a misconception or something that you've learned about them that you would advise people about if they're interested in starting one, or just interested in being a part of one?
So, I mean, again, going back to the differentiation between like a network and a coalition, I would say coalitions are most successful when they're like built up of, specific stakeholder groups, of like coalitions of people that are already doing their own separate stuff. And so, first of all, my best suggestion for someone that's interested in getting involved in climate activism or education or conservation or even a different, sector, which always I found like ties back to climate change in some way, isn't to necessarily get involved through a coalition, but get involved through an organization or a network. Building out your own personal work, your own personal capacity, your own personal expertise and experience, so that, for example, if you got involved with ThinkOcean or got involved with another like environmental organization, like working on projects, leading those different efforts. And then from there, once you have a project and you're like, hey, I want to, for example, expand the population of oysters in a specific seabed. Super niche, I know, but I feel like oysters are awesome. Then from there, saying, okay, I wanted to build out this project. We need to bring in partner groups. We need to build a coalition of groups and a coalition of people that are also interested or currently working on projects surrounding this topic, and work with them for like a shared purpose to make it happen. And likewise, I think that I know that we've spoken a little bit about the intersectionality of different issues, about like you can bring together people that are focusing, like might have previously only exclusively been focusing on social justice work, but social justice work is incredibly intersectional with climate activism. But likewise, it's really important to be intergenerational as well. There are a lot of environmental groups out there, which like not to like call them out or anything like that, but that are like composed of people that are already deep in their professional careers, or people that have a huge wealth of experience and have been in it for a really long time. There are also organizations like ThinkOcean that are entirely youth-led, and that are composed of younger people that don't have decades of experience. That doesn't discount the work that we do, but it does, make us have different perspectives or different strategies that are taken. And so it's really important when building those coalitions that you're not just bringing in people from your same worldview, and making sure you're bringing in that wealth of knowledge, which comes from a diverse coalition. And so, yeah, that would, I would first of all always say, if it's one person trying to get involved with, don't think about coalitions. Think about like what project, what organization can I get involved with? Because that's the best thing to do as an individual.
I love that. There's far too little intergenerational collaboration happening. And some of the reasons why I got involved is from really experienced scientists and organizers and leaders who are so crazy cool. And I would love to work with them closely one day. But I think, yeah, I want to echo that point. It's definitely intergenerational collaboration. Well, I want to share with you all how to get involved with this amazing work. There we go. Can you see my screen with the take action now, Ben?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So if you don't know how QR codes work, simply take your phone, act like you're taking a picture, and scan the QR code. That's these little boxes right here. Your first QR code is if you want to subscribe to the monthly Rising Blue Network newsletter by the Ocean Project and World Ocean Day. Cool opportunities, cool events, and awesome youth organization spotlight. So if you are a youth organization and you want to be spotlighted in the next newsletter, go ahead and scan that QR code and reach out and let us know. The second one is check out the One World United by Crisis webinar series, which is hosted by ThinkOcean and society members around the globe, it seems like, which is really great and exciting. So if you are watching and you are not in the United States, this is a perfect series for you. If you are in the United States, I mean, obviously this is a perfect series for you, but yeah, it gives you a little bit more of that global perspective, which is always important and great. That third QR code, start planning World Ocean Day 2021, June 8th. Which is World Ocean Day. It's coming very, very, very quickly. So see how you can get involved. If you are a part of the Rising Blue network, you saw yesterday that Youthathon Part 2, well, not Part 2, but the second Youthathon is coming the weekend before World Ocean Day. So we're very excited about that. But start planning what you can do, how you're going to get involved for our ocean, both in your local and global communities. And another opportunity from our friends over at Earth Echo, if you are interested, they're hosting a World Water Week student forum featuring some really cool speakers and opportunities during World Water Week. So definitely do not sleep on any of these opportunities and see how you can get involved further if some of these organizations really speak to you. And certainly, last but not least, give ThinkOcean and Ben May himself a follow and continue to check out their work. They're constantly doing cool things, things that are, I'm like, wait, what? How, what? I need to get involved with that. So definitely, again, don't sleep on ThinkOcean. Get involved. There's chapters probably near where you're watching. So definitely give them follow and check out their website, which you could do by scanning the QR code in the right hand corner. And as always, please tell us how you're getting involved, how you're taking action for our shared blue planet, and what you're doing to come together with your friends, family, network to be the change that you wish to see in the world. As always, I can't thank you enough, Ben, for being here, for spending your Wednesday night with me. You are an incredibly busy human, so I'm really thankful for your knowledge, your brain time, your ideas, your thoughts, and yeah, your work, because it brings me a lot of optimism knowing that there are people like you, people like all the people I've worked with at ThinkOcean. Shout out to ThinkOcean Italy, because they are some of the coolest people ever. I enjoyed working with them so much last year. But yeah, no, thank you guys so much. Thank you for everyone watching. You all are awesome. Just know that you all are making more of a difference by watching things like these, building your skills, looking at what's happening in your community. You are making more of a difference than you could ever possibly realize. So I thank you as always. Mother Earth thanks you, and I hope to see you next.